Recently, the long-awaited TV adaptation of The Last of Us aired its finale to its first season. And even though the season wasn't completely flawless, it proved that with the right amount of care and thought, video game stories can in fact be adapted successfully into other mediums. After seeing the show become such a massive success, it got us thinking about the developer of the game, Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog has been known for over a decade as the industry leader in narrative video games, and that got us thinking what other Naughty Dog games could be adapted into a TV show or even a movie.
What about the Uncharted movie?
Huh?
The Uncharted movie with Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg from last year?
Oh my god, I completely forgot that it was a thing.
Yeah, it's weird because when it comes to Naughty Dog, their two main series are Uncharted and The Last of Us, and it seems like nobody has been comparing the two because everyone forgot about the Uncharted movie. But Tom Holland's Uncharted didn't slow the trend of video game adaptations in Hollywood. Ghost of Tsushima has a movie in the works from John Wick director Chad Stahelski, and after the Mario movie just steamrolled at the box office, we're sure to see a wave of video game projects being adapted into other mediums.
But adapting something into another medium is a tricky thing to do successfully, especially with an interactive one like video games. There is no single blueprint to follow to make an adaptation good.
The Mario movie isn't an adaptation of a fully fleshed out narrative like The Last of Us or a movie based on a book. For the first time though, we do have two projects adapted from video games made by the same company with narratives that were co-wrote by the same writer. Looking at the fact that The Last of Us was a hit with fans, critics, and the public, and the fact that the Uncharted movie is basically forgotten already, it's very clear that The Last of Us did something right and Uncharted did something very wrong. In 2007, when the first of the series, Uncharted Drake's Fortune, released, making video games more cinematic was all the rage. As technology improved, it seemed like the industry was hell-bent on improving graphics, animations, narratives, and acting performances. And at the time, Uncharted Drake's Fortune was a perfect example of one of those games becoming more cinematic. At the time.
When you look at the first Uncharted without nostalgia goggles in 2023, of course you can see the significance of it and how it moved the industry forward. But it feels ultra-dated on its own. And it breaks my heart to say this, but it also applies to Uncharted 2 Among Thieves.
Now, don't get us wrong. We love Uncharted 2. I can already see people rushing to type that that game is a masterpiece and it deserves no criticism, but I just want to say the graphics and cinematic quality of Uncharted are what made it a masterpiece in 2008. And newer games have just surpassed the quality of Uncharted 2.
Which of course they have, it's just the nature of how games progress and improve themselves.
Especially when a draw to a video game is its cinematic nature. As the industry becomes more cinematic, it gets left in the dust a little bit. But that's not to say that Uncharted 2 didn't blow everyone's minds when it came out. If you were not a gamer when Uncharted 2 Among Thieves came out in 2009, it felt like Naughty Dog went into the future 5 years and brought back a video game from that time.
It for real did. Like, the graphics were incredible, the puzzles were fun and intuitive, the narrative was a compelling roller coaster ride as you join Nate on a dangerous adventure around the world.
Whoa!
Hey! Look at him go!
Whoa!
Oh.
But when we're talking about adapting Uncharted into a movie, you have to look at what drew people to the Uncharted games in the first place. The entire experience finally provided gamers with what it felt like to be in an action-packed adventure movie like Indiana Jones or The Mummy.
Right, like climbing up a crashed train, hanging off a cliffside, being attacked by a psychotic helicopter pilot, and fighting your way through a collapsing building, just to name a few.
Most importantly, these things are happening while the player is in control. You are playing through these huge events. You are climbing up a crashed train, you are running through an actively collapsing building around you.
You are Indiana Jones.
You are Brendan Fraser. Oh my god. Oh my god. Thank you. I just need to know that I've done one thing right with my life.
Wow. Wow.
Oh my god.
That was amazing.
I'm sorry, I lost myself.
That was incredible.
I was in it.
You were in it.
Now that brings us back to the Uncharted movie. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. I'm in a fishbowl. Don't ask. Today's video is sponsored by Aura. Aura can identify data brokers exposing your info and submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Brokers are legally required to remove your info if you ask them, but they make it super hard to do, and Aura can handle it for you. You can try Aura free for 2 weeks using our link, aura.com/Burback. It's also in the description down below. It's really easy to set up, so you don't have to download several different apps to get things like parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and more. You get everything at one affordable price. So let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online so you can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. To keep people from exploiting or profiting off your private information, you can go to aura.com/Burback to start your 2-week free trial or click the link in the description. Thank you, Aura. Goodbye. Okay. Back to the Uncharted movie, because if the initial pitch of the Uncharted games were, what if you could play through an Indiana Jones movie, then the pitch of Tom Holland's Uncharted would be, what if instead of playing an Indiana Jones movie, you could watch an Indiana Jones movie?
Now, I've never seen that before.
Except for Indiana Jones 1, 2, 3, 4, the new one, The Mummy, Fool's Gold with Matthew McConaughey.
Is that the one where they're diving in the water for...
Don't say, you can't know that about Fool's Gold and then say, is that the one? You clearly know Fool's Gold. Don't lie to them. It's embarrassing to know Fool's Gold. And yeah, it's because Dad watched it while we were on vacation. That's exactly right. The draw to Uncharted, unlike The Last of Us, came from its ability to create spectacle in games similar to mostly 2000s blockbusters. But when you're turning that back into a movie in 2022, you just get an average blockbuster starring Spider-Man and Marky Hate Crime Mark.
Does everyone remember that?
We do. Wikipedia.
Right there.
Read it.
The Last of Us, however, is entirely different. The game's fame comes from the fact that in 2013, the linear narrative was executed so well that it was shocking to see in a video game. The story structure, dialogue, and especially the performances made this game shine.
And that's not to say that Uncharted 4 doesn't also have that draw, but you'd kind of be naive and a little bit nostalgic to say that Uncharted 1 and 2 have a similar killer story like The Last of Us.
Right.
Pirates.
Pirates?
Yeah, the modern kind. They don't take prisoners. At least not male prisoners.
Wait.
Do you know how to use one of these?
Yeah, it's like a camera. You point and shoot, right?
Good girl.
Then it starts to make sense why this worked better on screen, especially when you have talent like Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey building off of what Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker did so successfully a decade ago. And that's not to say that Uncharted is not loved for its characters or performances. Nolan North as Nathan is amazing.
He's one of my favorite characters in games.
But if you're looking at the actual story, and again, we still like Uncharted 1 and 2, Nathan Drake doesn't really have a lot of depth as a character in the first 2 games. He's a fun and quippy guy who adds a layer of comedy to the series, but that's about it. In Uncharted 3, we finally start to see interesting aspects of Nate's character and past, because a core motivator to his life as a thief in 1 and 2 is the fact that Nate is chasing the greatness of his explorer ancestor, Sir Francis Drake. But in the 3rd game, you learn that Nate has been living a lie. Not only was he an orphan who Sully picked up off the street, giving Sully a more interesting relationship to Nate, but Nathan has been lying to himself and others about being a descendant of Francis Drake.
Father surrenders son to the state at the age of 5. Entrusted to the St. Francis Boys' Home. It's also Dickensian.
But then sets up Uncharted 4 to be a real deep dive into the character and who he truly is.
But that's what's so frustrating about the Uncharted movie. In the Last of Us TV show, we got true representations of Joel and Ellie, and in the Uncharted movie, Nate isn't really Nate.
The beloved character, Victor Sullivan, aka Sully, isn't really Sully.
Why are you here, Victor? Because somebody's got to keep an eye out for him.
He's Mark Wahlberg playing Mark Wahlberg.
Wait, which way should we turn, left or right?
I don't know. What does this book say?
Oh, right here. Both you turn your keys clockwise at the same time.
Turn.
Shit! Thanks a lot. You almost got me killed.
Clockwise, Sully!
Well, it was 50-50, so I made a guess.
A guess? That could have been our heads.
Well, clearly she turned the keys the other way.
And Elena, who is, other than Nate, the most core part of this series, whether you want to admit it or not. The series opens with Elena and Nate, and it ends with Elena and Nate. She's also the only reason that Nathan Drake isn't an unbearable asshole in most of the games.
Elena, wait!
I don't get you.
Look, I wanted to tell you.
You know what? Enough.
No, I wanted to, but how could I?
I don't know. Just say it.
I had to protect you.
That is bullshit, Nate. You just didn't have the nerve to face me again.
I knew you would react like this.
How would you react? You lied to me. For weeks. If you were killed, I wouldn't have even known about it. And now you have a brother.
And they completely cut her character out of the movie. She does not exist. And the absence to such a core character to the story made us realize that whether you're adapting something from a book or a game, the thing that will most likely make it a successful adaptation is its narrative.
The Halo show? Who cares about the plot? People just like shooting aliens.
Percy Jackson's The Lightning Thief was good, but what if we take out the main villain of the first book and also the main antagonist of the whole series in this movie?
You can make small changes to a story or world when adapting them to screen, but it has to be a careful decision that doesn't upset the core of why it resonated with people in the first place. And like we mentioned, the draw to Uncharted includes its plot, but the plot that it's offering is of a blockbuster movie we've seen many times before.
But not only is The Last of Us praised for its story, which kind of automatically makes it a better project to adapt on screen, the writer of the game Neil Druckmann and co-creator Craig Mazin were extremely careful in adapting the game into episodes of TV.
In 2019, Craig was fresh off of showrunning his HBO show Chernobyl. After the show was a hit with critics and audiences, HBO basically gave him the choice to work on whatever he wanted.
So I'm going into this meeting not knowing what to expect. I follow Craig's lead, and he launches into a pitch for the story for the executives that are in the room. And then I'm like, okay, do I jump in? Do I help out? I was like, what if I don't? What if I just lean back in my chair and watch someone else pitch the story that I've pitched a million times? And again, I feel the passion this guy has for the material. And then he finishes the pitch, and then Casey stands up and he's like, well, Craig, I told you whatever your next project is has to make you float. This is clearly it. And they turned to me and he's like, it was a pleasure meeting you. Let's make this show.
Craig put a lot of thought in how they were going to transition this narrative to TV while maintaining everything that made the game so great. He did this because he's a showrunner who genuinely loves The Last of Us and respects it as a game.
Complexity is why The Last of Us as a narrative is so gorgeous. It's why it's the most beautiful story told in the entire genre of video games. It's why Neil is a genius, and it's why I wanted to make the show in the first place.
Now, agreeing with that point or not, it's clear that Craig is here because he's truly passionate about making this show. He wanted to retell this exact story for a different audience, and he and Neil put a lot of thought in what needed to be changed and what needed to be kept to maintain the identity from the games that made it so popular in the first place. In an interview with The New Yorker, Craig said, when you're playing a section, you're killing people, and when you die, you get sent back to the checkpoint. All those people are back, moving around in the same way. At a certain point, they read as obstacles, not as human beings. In the show, such encounters would carry more weight. Watching a person die, I think, ought to be much different than watching pixels die. They both knew that the amount of violence in the game wouldn't translate to TV, and the viewer would become numb to it. So they pulled back on the amount of action to make those moments more impactful to the story and the characters. Though maybe they did overcorrect since there's almost no infected in the show after the 5th episode, but they definitely had the right idea of the needs of the game versus the needs of the show.
So the good video game adaptation was handpicked by a showrunner fresh off of a critically acclaimed season of TV and made in collaboration with the original writer of the game. So what happened with Uncharted?
In 2009, 2 years after the original game release, Charles Roven and Alex Gardner started developing a script.
Then in 2010, David O. Russell started writing and developing a script. Mark Wahlberg was set to play Nathan Drake, and Joe Pesci was supposed to be his uncle?
Is that right?
Quote from Mark Wahlberg, I'm obviously in whatever David wants to do, but the idea of it is so off the charts. Robert De Niro being my father, Joe Pesci being my uncle, it's not going to be the watered down version, that's for sure. What does that mean? This isn't your dad's Uncharted that came out 3 years ago.
But the next year, in 2011, Neil Berger replaced David O. Russell.
Then in 2012, Neil fucks off to make Divergent, and then somebody else rewrites the script.
In 2014, Seth Gordon is now directing the film, and the script is being rewritten again by David Guggenheim.
Also in 2014, the script then gets another writer, Mark Bowl, to write a different script. Then in 2015, Seth Gordon fucks off to make Baywatch. In 2016, they get another writer to make a completely new script and hire Sean Levy of Night at the Museum to direct the movie.
In 2017, Tom Holland is cast as Nathan Drake, and it's set as a prequel. Rafe Judkins is set to rewrite this script again.
In 2018, Sean Levy fucks off to make Free Guy. So I guess he didn't want to make the video game character into a movie. He wanted to make a movie about a video game character.
You got to keep it fresh between projects.
You got to keep it fresh. I do like Night at the Museum, though.
In 2019, Travis Knight is hired to direct the film, and Mark Wahlberg is hired to play Sully, which is a mistake. And then in the same year, Travis Knight leaves because he has scheduling conflicts.
Then finally, in 2020, Ruben Fleischer comes on to direct the film. After 10 years of development, rewrites, and seemingly all of Hollywood tossing this movie around like a hot potato, it finally releases on February 18th of 2022. And Uncharted is so damn boring.
It's so boring.
It's so boring. First and foremost, when it comes to the Uncharted movie, it's very clear that the biggest problem with this movie is its cast. And nothing shows the miscasting of Tom Holland more in the movie than when they show a flashback of Nathan Drake as a teenager and then slowly fade to him as an adult, played by Tom Holland. But the fade just looks like teenage Nathan Drake ages 1 year or just turns into another teenager.
We like Tom Holland, but the reason he was cast as Peter Parker is because he has the face of a teenager. So even though he's the age Nathan Drake should be at this point, he still looks like a young kid. It all just depends on how you look when it comes to casting. Pedro Pascal is 47 years old, but with some gray hair dye, he could pass as an older man.
And you know, we're 26, which means we're the same age as Tom Holland. That's depressing.
I didn't like that.
That stings. And like we said, we really like Tom Holland.
I think he's a really good actor.
Yeah, and I like seeing him as a gymnast in Spider-Man, and even parts of Uncharted, he was the right move for Nate as a climber. Sometimes it's not important if a character looks like the character that they're adapted from. Right. But with Nathan Drake, you just have seen so much of him, you kind of want somebody to look like him.
I agree, yeah.
And it doesn't stop at Tom Holland, because I think both of us agree that maybe the worst part about this entire movie is they take the father figure to Nathan Drake, Victor Sullivan, and not only cast Mark Wahlberg, but they turn the character into somebody completely different.
They turn him into Mark Wahlberg. That's the issue.
Wow, that's your expert analysis?
Well, you just gave me the book like an hour ago. What am I supposed to do?
I mean, I got that far on my own. I've seen the picture of the tree. Where's the gold? Is it under the tree? Is it in the tree?
He's not an adoptive father figure that is wise and kind to Nathan Drake.
He can talk his way out of any situation.
Yeah, Mark Wahlberg is a selfish, paranoid asshole in this movie.
He is.
He's crazy.
He's an asshole.
So that's what this is about. You dragged me all the way out here. Let me believe that I might see my brother again because you think that I know something.
Yeah. Do you?
And not only do they fundamentally misunderstand Sully as a character, they misunderstand Nathan Drake. Because I think the most interesting part of Nathan Drake comes in Uncharted 3 and 4, when they finally address the fact that Nathan isn't a descendant of a famous explorer, he's just a thief who constantly wants to prove himself and make a name for himself, but completely pushes away the people in his life to do so.
But in the movie, he's just a great guy that doesn't really need any mentorship.
And nothing shows that more than this clip from the movie.
You're a good guy, Nate. Too good.
If Nathan Drake is starting out as too good of a guy, then what stories are interesting for him to tell? Because the most interesting story is Uncharted 4, I think.
Right.
The biggest pirate treasure of all time is within our grasp.
I thought this was about saving Sam.
It is. I mean, come on, it's both, right? We need the treasure so we can save Sam.
How is Elena cool with all this? Jesus, kid.
Look, it's just not that simple.
With all that you two have been through together,
She wouldn't understand this.
you are not giving her enough credit.
I can't take that chance.
The games also offer a rich history to the treasure you're hunting for. Take this boat scene for example. This scene appears in Uncharted 4 and the movie. In the game, when you get to this cave, you have learned the entire history of a band of pirate captains who pooled their fortunes together to create their own society.
As you travel the world in this game and look for the treasure, you almost in real time get to experience the story that played out in the past as they created this society, ultimately finding yourself at a table full of the skeletons of the pirates you've been looking at the whole game, and figuring out that once you find the secret society, it had crumbled because one of the pirates betrayed the rest. Finally, after watching all that history play out and after every stone has been turned over, you earn seeing the treasure.
In the Uncharted movie, you get a tiny bit of history, and then Sully, Nate, and Chloe use these keys like 40 times, and then Nate just finds himself at the cave. Eddie, before we move on, I have to talk about this scene.
Oh, okay.
There's a scene where Nate, Sully, and Chloe all drink together while they lay low and plan. I counted, and this scene has 10 empty bottles of wine in it. Now, I'd like to do some math here.
What?
Let's say that Tom Holland is 150 pounds, and let's say he drank for 6 hours, which I think is a reasonably fair guess, right?
Yeah, that's longer than the scene. They're definitely only drinking for a couple of hours.
Exactly. So divided up, that is 3 1/3 bottles of wine each. Each bottle is 750 milliliters at 13% ABV, which is the average amount of a Spanish Rioja. I looked it up. We are looking at a blood alcohol level of about 0.43%.
Holy shit.
Now, anything above 0.3 to 0.4% is a real chance of alcohol poisoning. Anything over 0.4% has a serious chance of death. So I guess as long as they don't keep drinking.
Who's still thirsty?
Holy shit.
I found another bottle of red.
Unlike The Last of Us TV show, which is pretty much beat for beat the game, but some changes are made to adapt it on screen, this is not a single tale of Nathan Drake. It's all of them and none of them at the same time, because the movie Frankenstein's specific scenes from all 4 games and just jumbles them up into one boring adventure. There's a lack of care for all of these characters, especially Nathan Drake and Elena, who doesn't exist. Compare that to The Last of Us, and these are wildly different ways to adapt a project.
Like we said many times, the Uncharted series is based off of movies we've all seen before. So what they offer is the use of gaming as a medium to tell those movies differently and its great cast of characters.
And we don't really blame Tom Holland or the director or the writer. We do blame Mark Wahlberg.
I blame Mark for everything.
Because of course they wanted to make the best movie possible, and there are aspects of Uncharted here. But due to over a decade of development hell, the Uncharted movie removes both of those things, while The Last of Us show carefully and respectfully tells the story from the original game and also respects its characters. So that's why one of them worked and one of them didn't.
And as a closer, we think it's really important that you all see this henchman's death from the Uncharted movie.